Welcome to the Great Beer State podcast from the Michigan Brewers Guild. The Great Beer State is a weekly show sharing conversations and stories from the passionate people who contribute to our vibrant Michigan beer community. It is made up of a mix between full-length archived interviews from the Guild's first documentary book project, A Rising Tide, Stories from the Michigan Brewers Guild, and conversations recorded in the here and now. Each episode is kicked off with a conversational update from host Scott Graham, Executive Director of the Guild, and the beer-evangelist Fred Biltman, author of A Rising Tide. Here's Scott and Fred. Welcome to Michigan's Great Beer State podcast. We are in episode 31. My name's Fred. I'm here with my good friend Scott Graham. Scott, what's happening out there?
Hi, Fred. It's kind of winter time. We're looking right smack at the Christmas, New Year's holiday season. So that's, I guess it's always a little stressful, and I'm always trying to make it a peaceful and relaxing time of year, but it's a lot of work for a lot of people. And in these days of COVID, I think there's probably some extra stress around. So I hope everybody's getting a chance to relax and enjoy the time. A lot of people aren't going to be traveling and having the same type of gatherings that they normally would, but I really do wish everybody a happy holiday season, and I'm looking forward to a great new year.
Absolutely. It's got to be better. And I think it's an interesting milestone too, to get to this time of year when both the weather, the holidays, everything is an interesting milepost to say where we are in the year, because so much else has been changed and distorted that it's been sort of disorienting to even know what's going on. We haven't had a lot of obvious things as big as the events like beer festivals, but also just general stuff, people working from home, things not happening. So in some way, it's just an interesting bookend to the challenging year. We have some other news too, in that we've been working and mentioning this behind the scenes, but we're no longer behind the scenes with the winter conference. You want to share a little bit about how that's changed and what's transpired and what the opportunities are?
Yeah, of course, our annual winter conference in January is it's, I guess, our biggest educational effort throughout the year. It's normally a time when industry people are getting together and enjoying a beer and some food and some learning and some sharing. And we decided to, even though we couldn't do something in person, to plan a virtual event. And I certainly have opinions kind of on both sides. A lot of people are Zoom meetinged out or virtual. There's some fatigue for that type of stuff, and I share that. I don't want more unnecessary type of virtual meeting, but I've really grown to appreciate it too. So I see it both ways, and it's a tool we've all gotten more used to. And yeah, we decided to go ahead and plan an event that would replace the winter conference and do it virtually. And so we've got fewer speakers, but we've got some really great speakers that I think are going to be fun and engaging. We decided to go ahead and have a virtual trade show. So I hope that provides value both to the allied members and people at breweries. I'm pretty sure that it will. And who knows? There's opportunity for people from a lot broader geography. Anybody can tune into the conference that wants to, no matter where they are. There's no hindrance in having to get to Michigan for the conference. So I hope we see a few people take advantage that are from outside of our normal audience.
Yeah, and I think there's content that would attract brewers. It would attract brewery owners and salespeople and tasting room managers. There's something for everybody, as they say. We've also joined forces with Michigan State University's the extension put on the Great Lakes Hop and Barley Conference for a number of years, and that has folded into this project. So Michigan State's involved, and we've got a track for growers and processors and customers for both hops, barley, and malted barley. So I think the invitation is across a wide spectrum of people in the beer community, and it's available for members and non-members as well. Correct?
Absolutely. There is a discounted rate for members, but either way, I think it's not too expensive. Um, and yeah, I think the extending our collaboration. Of course, we've always collaborated with the Master Brewers District Michigan, and this further collaboration with MSU Extension, we're really fortunate to have that strong extension program contribute to agriculture, and it's brought a lot to the state, and it's bringing a lot to the brewing industry. And for several years, they've worked to put on a really great Great Lakes Hop and Barley Conference, and we've talked for a couple years about how to get our groups more together. And so we're really looking forward to having a cooperative event this year. I don't think we're realizing all the opportunity, but hey, it gets us started for 2022 as well.
Yeah. And so registration is open, and that is both for trade show vendors. So if you want your company represented there, you can sign up there. If you want to buy your ticket for the conference, a 50-day member rate, 75 non-member in advance will get you all 3 days of content. It includes presentations from Garrett Oliver, Vinny Chilurzo, Jared Jankowski, Lindsay Barr. Who else here? Mark Serini. Let me move my screen. Jamie Floyd, Margaret and Campbell from Oregon State University on malting, Jesse Boussard on craft malting. We've got the whole conference committee. So Alec Mull, John Mallett, Scott Graham, the crew from MSU are going to be presenting at the beginning of Thursday. Dr. Ann Van Hall and Alex Adams, both presenting on hops. And then Ari Weinswig from Zingerman's is wrapping it up with a closing keynote. So like you said, not only is it open to people from all over the place to attend, but it's been really an interesting opportunity to bring in some speakers that I think it's a docket we would have had a hard time putting together in 1 year, because normally it's, will you come to Michigan in January and spend 3 days with us? So this has opened up some opportunities in terms of bringing speakers from all over the place. So
yeah, the logistics of getting people all to one conference, that's a real opportunity with the virtual conferences. Everybody participates from wherever they are. So, and I think we've done well at getting people from around the country and around the globe, really.
yeah, so check it out. You can go to mibeer.com and see the schedule, get yourself registered, and we hope to see you there. It is January 11th through the January 12th through the 14th. So with that,
Correct.
It seems like a good time to jump into the Brewers Dozen for this week. So you want to talk about the group of breweries you put together for our member shout outs this week?
Yeah, it's I guess what I did was focus on roughly the kind of I-94 in Battle Creek, Jackson, basically between Kalamazoo and Ann Arbor. There are a cluster of breweries roughly in that area, and our the interview we're featuring this year comes from the archives, and it's with Steve Berthel. Of course, Steve lives in Kalamazoo, and interestingly enough, I was having a little conversation with him. Thinking about featuring him prompted me to give him a call. I hadn't talked to him in a while. I wanted to see how he was doing and how things were going. And one of the things that was on his agenda that day was going to a Territorial Brewing company to pick up some takeout beer. And that brings me right to the first brewery on the list for today's Brewers Dozen, which is Territorial Brewing in Springfield, Michigan.
Right on. And then a nod to the Michiganders' geography is the Hand Map Brewing in Battle Creek.
Yeah, Hand Map opened during these pandemic times, so talk about a challenge. And of course, a perennial favorite of mine, Dark Horse Brewing Company in Marshall.
And Grand River Brewery, also in Marshall, continuing a historic representation of brewing in Marshall.
Albion Malleable Brewing Company in Albion. They have a really nice kind of pub type atmosphere and some good beer there. It's been a while since I've been there, but really enjoyed it when I was.
Excellent. You'll have to help me with the geography on this one. In Jonesville, we've got Ramshackle Brewing Company.
Yeah, so I kind of dipped south. Jonesville is a little ways south of 94. It's not as close as I guess as everybody else on the list, but it seemed like a good idea to dip down and pick that up. It's an interesting, real small brewery. And again, anybody that's touring this area, I'd make it a point to get there. Moving over from Jonesville to Jackson, we have 127 Brewing in Jackson.
And then we've got Grand River Brewery Jackson. And it dawns on me that I may not have said the first one properly, but Grand River Brewery in Jackson is in Jackson, where Grand River Brewery Marshall is in Marshall.
Yes, that's their designation. Two places, not too far apart. And then also in Jackson is Ironbark Brewing Company.
And we've got Chelsea Ale House Brewery in Chelsea.
Yep, and if we keep going a little bit further to the east, we start to get closer to Ann Arbor, but still in Dexter, there's Jolly Pumpkin Artisan Ales, the Dexter operation, and that rounds out our Brewers dozen for this week, even though it's only 11 breweries for those of you who count.
Not my strong suit, but glad to give the shout outs out there, and certainly reach out to those members and any others in your area, from coast to coast, from far and near. Go get yourself some local beer. So that brings us to our interview for the week, which is our good friend Steve Berthel. Everybody knows him as Bert. Fun interview because he's a fun person. He's been around for a long time. He's just a one of a kind character, and he's been in just about every vantage point of the brewing industry too. Like when I met him when he was a customer, a regular at Bell's, and then pretty soon he's across the street brewing at Kraftbrau, and the next thing you know, he's an owner, and he has a really interesting path, and he's one of those people who has a voracious appetite for life. So if you're talking with Steve, you're going to hear his thoughts on various subjects, and he's passionate guy.
Yeah, it's easy to know where you stand with Bert.
So, and he goes way back. It's amazing to me throughout these interviews, just all these different perspectives and points of view coming forward. Steve's was unique because he was around in the years when the guild was forming, but he wasn't part of that same. But then on the other hand, he sort of came into the guild after it came together. So I thought it was interesting hearing that from him and just getting his take on it. I loved him talking about the ride home from his first beer festival. And it was like things changed.
Yeah, that was great. And of course, Bert was on our board of directors for several terms. I got to know him even better then and really enjoyed the perspective that he brings and his dedication and passion. He doesn't engage in anything without real dedication and passion, and certainly enjoyed that. And I also, it's hard to think of a stronger advocate for using Michigan-grown brewing ingredients, and I really like that about Bert, and it was fun to get a little bit of that in the interview as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't say or kind of give a shout out to being grateful that Bert's still on this side of the dirt. He had a real scare with the heart attack and really being dead, and then brought back and had a real significant life-threatening health issue there, and that seems like a long time ago, but it was really last summer, I believe. And just want to give a shout out to Bert that we're really glad you came through, and just love that you're part of our community. So cheers to that.
Absolutely. Still continues to be something that he has to work with and work through. But I'm thankful that he's hopefully mostly on the other side of those issues. So yeah, great interview, great personality, fun part of the brewing industry, Steve Berthel.
So with that, we'll head to early October 2018 in our conversation with Bert. Take it away. Here's Bert. Thanks for joining me. We're kind of trading stories and trying to get at the origin story and sort of the arc of the history of the Michigan Brewers Guild, which is really the story of the Michigan brewing community, which you've been a part of for a long time.
Yep, since 1996.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how you found yourself making beer, how you found yourself part of this community.
Well, I always liked beer, much to my parents' chagrin. And, we moved to Kalamazoo in, I believe, 1973. My dad worked for Upjohn. And I got a job in the late 70s working at Lee's Sporting Goods, and I first met Larry Bell there. Yeah. And he was working at what's now the Radisson, it used to be the Hilton, at Lee's downtown location. Met him at a Christmas party, and he actually had some of his homebrew and some of his whiskey that he was making, probably illegally. And it was pretty awful stuff.
Probably is generous.
But, fast forward, 1985 or so, and he opened up the brewery downtown. And I bought my first 1-gallon cube of Bell's beer, and it kind of changed everything.
Yeah.
And it was flat, it was dark, it was syrupy probably. And we could go back down and bring our
all
cube.
Those wonderful attributes.
Yeah. That
sold in a plastic cube.
Yeah. No carbonation, fill it right off the tap at the old Eccentric, cafe, or before that even, just in the old brewery. But towards then, the late 80s, early 90s, I hooked up with a guy that got me into homebrewing. And he ended up moving to Albuquerque with his girlfriend to go to grad school, so he inherited his apartment downtown and all the homebrew equipment, and it started All Grain Brewing. And thanks to a lot of mentorship from some of my friends like Steve Bushka and Hazen and Rick, at Bell's, the Brewers in the old days, and Larry too, I honed my craft making homebrew, and in 1996 had an opportunity to get a job bartending at Kraftbrau. And within a couple months, I was helping out with brewing, and the original owner quit because he went back to his painting job, and I took over part-time brewing for him at Kraftbrau in 96, and then got more involved in 97, 98, and by 2000 I was a co-owner. And it was the early days then that the guild had formed. We didn't have enough budget to go to the first few festivals, but I think it was 2000, I think it was our first festival that I went to for the guild. It was still at Frog Island Park, which is like, if you remember those hot, humid days, it was like a big bubble of humidity and horribly no breeze or anything, and mosquitoes.
The bowl.
Oh yeah, it was just horrendous.
Yeah.
And I remember you yelled at us because we were cooking on a little Weber because there was nothing we could eat because we were all vegetarians at the time, a bunch of tree-hugging hippies. But, when Scott Graham got hired on as the executive director for the guild, Scott and I went back quite a ways from the Big Buck days, and he was the first brewer there for Joel Flowers. And he says, man, we really want to get you on board. You've been a part of this industry a long time. You got good perspective. So finally, I think it was like 2006 or so, 2005 maybe, that I started harboring the idea and went for election and won and stayed on the board for 8 years. And those were very formative years because for once the Guild was just starting to go into the black instead of being in the red the whole time off the festivals. We had no volunteers except maybe Lewis and Victor to speak of. And so we were on our hands and knees picking up garbage after the festival and, cleaning stuff up and putting up and taking down the snow fence. And so we were a very hands-on group of, dedicated volunteers in those days. And through my tenure, as in the 8 years, I've watched that Guild grow to where we were actually banking money. We weren't bouncing checks. Not that we really did before, but, money was tight. And we had volunteers that now would take over those tasks that we found very unseemly after a full weekend of partying, and talking about Michigan beer. And it was quite a great thing. And, part of that too then was, when I started in there looking at my role, what was I going to take on? I picked up the music booking, and I feel like I stuck with that 11 years. So, even after I was off the board, I stayed around.
Yeah.
And then finally got to a point where in my life where it was time to pass the baton.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's, my involvement with a nutshell. It was very rewarding time for me to see the growth, to see a lot of new members come into the board, old members leave, and, just get fresh perspective and grow as an individual that wanted to voice my opinion but felt maybe too timid in the early days to where I was outspoken about things and feeling that we were all friends at the end of the day. And that was an important thing for me as a human to be able to learn and go forward with into my life now. So.
Yeah. So bring me back to that first involvement with the Guild, kind of your first Guild memories. So what was the decision like to go to your first festival? Was the timing mostly economical, or was there also a little bit of a growing interest in the community? And then what was the drive home like?
Well, the first festival we went to, like I said, was at Frog Island. I've been wanting to go. My ex-business partner didn't want to spend the money, didn't think it was necessary. But I really was feeling my oats as a brewer, and I really, Kraftbrau started as an all lager brewery, and I brought some ale specialties in and started doing real ale there. And I really felt I wanted to share that with my peers. And finally convinced them that we should go. And so I brought a select group of volunteers with me. And it was amazing. We just had such a great time and got welcomed so much from the start, by everybody that was there. Not that we were unknown.
Despite me yelling at you for grilling.
Well, yeah, that was minor. And you still let us finish our lunch, so that was good. But after that, we always had vegetarian options to the Guild, festivals to this day. And that's one of those little things that we all learned,
Yep.
And it was good because, you got to have something for everybody, as we know, owning breweries and being part of breweries and distilling and, making wine and mead and cider. But I'll never forget, we were just like kids in a candy shop that weekend, having all the people there. And but there was no music in those days. They had maybe Great Lakes Grass rambled around from the Bell's tent. But, we just were busy serving people beer that were curious about what we were doing. And, everybody was helping everybody else, and we knew nothing about booths or banners or any of that stuff. So we didn't, we were just standing there serving beer out of, pumps because we didn't have a draft box. So quickly we learned that we had to, start upping the game to make our presentation better. But I'll never forget the drive home. It was just went on forever, on Sunday. And or maybe we came home Saturday night even that first year, but it was only one day then, So I got up early, got there, set up, came home Saturday night, and we all had beers to drink. So we found the soberest one and plied him with coffee and water, and the rest of us probably slept halfway home. But that was it. The hook was set in the jaw for good then,
Yeah.
And every year we knew then, okay, we got to get banners made, we got to have signage, we got to do this, bring some swag out, to give away, and just little things that each year.
It sort of upped your it created an aspiration to up your festival game.
Oh yeah, totally.
Even
and
for that
was
one
fun
festival a year.
Because when you get home from one festival, you already think about next year's fest. Because we only had one then, and it was like the big deal. You got a whole year to prep for it. So what are we going to do? What beers are we going to make? What are we going to set aside? You know, it really made you think a lot about, you know, what you did as a brewer and as a business half owner and how you present things. And at that time, you know, I had just barely started booking national talent at Kraftbrau. So that was getting the wheels going to eventually get bands, you know, into the thing, but they just didn't have a budget for it. So we didn't do it.
Yeah.
So it was mostly breweries that brought a trio or a solo person to play. I remember when Scotty Karate played the first time up on a throne at the Dark Horse booth, which in those days was one table as well, with like 4 beers or 5 beers.
Yeah.
And Scotty Karate in his gold football helmet and goggles or whatever. Yeah. And that was like, wow, what the heck is this, man? This is a whole new wrinkle. So, and it was probably like 2001, I went to the GADF, but Great Taste of the Midwest for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
So it all kind of went hand in hand. You know, I go, wow, we got to go to this one in Milwaukee now. Because we saw a lot of people from Milwaukee and Chicago coming over to Kalamazoo due to Bell's, you know, popularity. And, you know, so we figured, hey, let's get on the, you know, shirt tails of this. So one led to another and another, and, you know, and now we have, you know, 4 sold out festivals statewide, including the UP. Most of them are 2 days, and actually the Marquette Fest is 2 days. 1 day is just exclusively for brewers and staff, which is kind of a cool concept as well. So anyways, it's been pretty awesome to see the growth in that.
Nice. And do you feel that, so how did your involvement in the guild then, you said the hook was set, and I hear the progression from a festival preparedness and kind of an engagement outside of your 4 walls. How else did you relate to the guild in those years, and how did it change your perspective as a developing business person?
Well, I think in those early days, the guild was less a resource for brewers and brewery people that wanted to get open or were new to the game, as much as it was just a fraternity, sorority of men and women that were in the industry, and some from the get-go, you know, like Scott King and John Leonardos and Larry Bell, and, you know, so there were people there, you know, Aaron, you know, Morris from Dark Horse. I mean, great people that if you needed a help or something or a question, you could ring them up, you know, and they're my guild brothers and they'll help us out, you know, and never once did somebody turn their back on a question. And, you know, I guess my best story about that is when Matt Greff started Corner Brewery, and this is a few years later, of course, but he found a brew house, 20-barrel brew house in Arizona, and Aaron closed down Dark Horse for a week, and they all took semi-trucks down there and a whole crew of people in one of their forklifts and loaded the whole thing up on flatbeds and brought it back on 2 semis and thought nothing of shutting down their business for a week to do that.
Yeah.
And not brewing anything and not doing distributor orders. But that was the kind of brotherhood we had in those days. And there weren't a lot of women there. We had Stacy Roth that was brewing and Kim Schneider. And other than that, we didn't have any other women involved. Sandy Hardy had already passed away, I believe. Harville. Right. So, you know, we didn't have a lot of women but even the women were, you know, had a place in our, you know, brewing world back then too. And we're making killer beers, I believe, for Michigan Brewing Company, up in by Lansing, and then I don't remember where Kim was brewing at.
She was in the Royal Oak area.
Yeah, maybe with Eric Brigham, and maybe it was at Big Buck for a little bit. Because, anyways.
Yeah, and there was another brewery in between where she is now. I'm spacing at the moment, but it was great beer.
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, it was just one of those things where at first it was just a phone call to pick somebody's brain on how to do something or process. Or what should I do? What distributors should I look for if you're thinking that route, you know? And I think as the guild grew in membership, and by the time I became a board member, that was already something, you know, what are we looking at as a resource for brewers? And when I started my first tenure, that was something that was very big on my mind that I wanted to make sure that we were able to do and be able to offer that to people and make it known, you know, that this is, you know, part of your guild membership. But in the old days, I think it was just mostly making friends with people. You might find somebody that, you know, like I met, you know, Josh Davies, who went on to become Arcadia's head brewer for many years in, you know, Battle Creek. And the two of us kind of hit on the real ale thing at the same time. And, you know, we got a lot of notoriety in real ale festivals all over the U.S., people poaching our firkins to take over there. because we always did it the right way, and people knew us for that. But that would have never happened if it wouldn't have been for the Brewers Guild, because I would have never known him. He was just a cellarman, when I met him at Michigan Brewing Company, and where friendship grew because we were like-minded in things. And I think that was the early part of the thing for me, was just meeting people. Who were the guys in Ann Arbor that were the lager brewers at now? Leopold Brothers.
Yeah.
They were the other lager brewery long before Wolverine stayed, and they lasted a few years and then split to Colorado. But, it was nice to have somebody else talk to about beer styles and what they're doing for their hops in this Oktoberfest or whatever, because that was kind of a gray frontier in those days. So, just finding like-minded brewers that you could, break bread with, have a pint with, go visit when you're over in their neck of the woods, or likewise when they came to Kalamazoo or something, and just share information about what we're trying to do so we could do it better, and I look back at those times, and we really were the guys that forged this industry in Michigan, where a lot of unique beer styles where we never stole anything from anybody else, but maybe just expounded on something they were doing and took it our own way, and we didn't cop to any outside influence on stuff. We weren't trying to make a better Northwest IPA or English IPA. We were trying to make Michigan stuff, from Michigan. And in those days, we didn't have any ingredients to pick from unless you grew them yourself. But, we just tried to do the best we can with our being unique as our own people, with our own focus on what we wanted to do. Yeah. And I do know that, quality, consistency, and cleanliness were big in those days, because we didn't have mentors. You didn't have the interweb to tell you how to do stuff, so we had to figure it out for ourselves. And we dumped a lot of batches of beer that went bad, for a while, and then figured out what we had to do differently. So it's quite a learning experience, let me tell you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was great. So
this must be some fire they're working on.
Must be. Maybe it's this thing they shot from the air.
Perhaps.
So, yeah.
We've been found out. So I'm interested in hearing about your. We could have a whole night's worth of conversation, and I'm going to try and pick the right highlights here. But so your path continued, not necessarily knowing you were going to be going into brewing in life, and then not necessarily knowing you're going to go into brewery ownership, and then you end up on the board of a trade association for that industry that you found yourself in. Tell me about the. If you can remember, what was the process like? What was the conversation you were having with yourself about the invitation to serve on the board, and then what was that? And then what happened next?
Well, Scott Graham, I think it was the first Winter Beer Fest that they had at Easttown in Lansing, when he first hit me up about being on the board, and that was the first year. That was 2006 February when that first festival happened. Was it?
Might have been a little earlier.
Maybe 2005?
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Okay, so anyways, it was the first one though, and I was there with Livery, so it was the first year we were open, 2005.
Okay, yeah.
And he's going, man, we really want you to run. I really want you on the board. I go, man, I just opened this brewery. I'm still getting my feet on the ground. I don't feel comfortable, committing to something until I'm comfortable. Because I didn't hire somebody to brew my beer for me, which is very happening thing to do now. I was hands-on all the way with everything. So if I had to commit to driving to Detroit or Lansing or Traverse City for a meeting, it cost me time in the brewery, which meant I had to work weekends. And so it's like, I said, I'll let you know when I'm ready. So I think it was probably about 2006 then, when they had the elections that year, 2007, right around there, that I finally said yes.
And why did you feel it was important to do? Important enough to sacrifice your valuable time?
Well, Scott just told me that, he goes, I really want your perspective because you're a small brewer. My whole time I was at the Livery, I never broke 600 barrels of production. Yet I had people coming from all over the world to drink my beer because it was unique. And he just knew I could express myself and spoke my mind. And, I really respected Scott for, his pedigree too, as a brewer and where he came from and what he did. Even after when he went to work for Miller Coors, after, being at Big Buck for years and getting to know Dick Leinenkugel and, just the knowledge that guy had about the industry, not just Michigan. And, you know, frankly, the guild made a lot of mistakes with getting somebody to be their executive director or a group to guide them. We needed somebody like Scott, who's a Gaylord native pretty much, to, you know, be in the game and, you know, guide us to the right path for Michigan breweries. And I felt honored that he wanted me to do it, but I also was very frank with him and said, I'm not going to do this till I'm comfortable doing it. And I called him up at home. I said, I'm ready. You know, so he put me on the ballot. And it was at the elections were in Detroit that year, and I had a fire to put out, and I couldn't go. But I remember Nate Walser calling me, quite inebriated, going, "You won, you won." And that was the first year I ran against Isaac, you know, and I beat him by like 20 votes was all. So, you know, that was pretty cool. So, you know, and then he got elected the next year. Yeah. And the whole time I was on the board, we served together, which is fun. So, you know, we would go back a long way too, but yeah, it's just one of those things that, you know, I knew I couldn't jump into it right away. I needed to get some things going and some ducks in a row with the livery. And when I felt comfortable I could handle both, you know, roles, that's when I took it on. And, you know, of course, the first thing they did was make me secretary, which I have the worst handwriting in the world. And I never took notes in high school. I memorized everything salient. But I realized quickly I had to like figure out some sort of shorthand. And that was, and I'm not computer literate enough to do it on computers like everybody else was doing. And I don't type for crap either. So I had my scratchy looking notebooks, you know, and I'd go home and edit the notes. And Scott King, second meeting, after I brought the minutes, you know, all typed up neatly and everything was concise, he goes, I've been on the board for a long time. He goes, I started this guild, you know, he goes, I have never seen minutes that look this good. I'm like, hallelujah.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, so once again, you know, you get accreditation for what you did. And, you know, I mean, took a long time for me to really speak up against these icons of our industry that, you know, ran the show pretty much. But finally one day somebody said something that really pissed me off. And I said something back and they're all like, well, tell us what you think. You know, what's your plan? And I just said my mind, and they all accepted that. And we went with it, maybe we didn't. But the fact is that we were there to work together. At the end of the day, we break bread and we have beers and we give each other a hug or a pat on the back, and we're all friends. And, you know, it was good to have not everybody following the same sheep, you know, down the trail.
Yeah. So would you say that's something important to share with the small breweries of today, that the importance of having their voice heard, even if it doesn't always go their way, that it's important to speak up and inform the room of your perspective one way or another?
We do not need this guild board run by representatives from 6 of the largest either, you know, bar ownership groups or breweries in this state. What does that do for the little guys? Absolutely nothing. We need a couple people on the board that are from less than 1,000 barrel production, because we need their voice and what are their concerns and their worries. I mean, that's what I did. And there's a lot more of us at that level than there is now, you know.
Yeah. And I hear from your experience that it was welcome, that you know, if we can call those people to step forward, that I hear you saying that they're going to find a receptive audience.
Well, I believe so, because I always, you know, Scott and I were really tight. Eric Brigman and I were really tight. You know, and we spent a lot of time together because we were the guys that were always early at the festivals and last to leave. Because, like I said, in the early days, we were the guys cleaning up. You know, a lot of people didn't take the time to do it, and they still don't, you know. Yeah. And they're not active in that aspect, which I think they should all have to do a certain amount of hourage at each festival day and clean up or doing a shift. Because it makes...
Institute the draft.
Well, it makes them realize how important our volunteers. I mean, we've got, what, 60 volunteers now that take care of the festivals. Yeah. But I really think it's important that everybody that sits on the board should have to work a shift doing something, whether it's emptying the garbage and the recycling. There
used to not be a choice. That was the volunteer.
I know. We did all that stuff. You know, and I just think it would put their mind in a whole different perspective on how valuable these people are and how good this organization is when we've got that many people coming back every festival year after year because they like doing what they're doing. But going back to the question about the small breweries, I just think a lot of these young guys, I mean, let's be honest about this, and I'm not here dissing anybody that's following their dream, but a year ago you were cooking on your wife's stove or in the garage with your buddies and everybody thinks your beer is the greatest, and now you're opening a brewery. So then, don't be intimidated. Go forward and speak your mind and serve your time and serve your fellow brewers with your time spent on the board, and give something back, because you'll get it back 1,000-fold from what your participation, and make your voice heard. And don't be discouraged if it doesn't happen exactly the way you want it, because nothing ever does.
So,
But you can get good ideas from people, whether they're big or small.
So can you speak to the importance of having a guild at all? Like how have either our larger communities, the marketplace, our industry, what are the benefits of an organization like this existing, or is it?
All right, so look at Michigan now. Did we surpass Colorado this year in number of breweries? If not, we're this far away. So I've heard we have over 400 operating. Maybe it's closer to 450 now. Frankly, since I'm off the board, I haven't really kept track of these numbers. They're just staggering. But
380 is the last number I heard.
Yeah, I think it's probably more than that. So, but I'm just saying that, for that many personalities, it's like a goat rodeo, right? The Guild has done one thing that not many other states have accomplished, and that's eradicated ego from this industry. I mean, there's always people that stand out that are, above and beyond. But
eradicated may be generous, but we've at least stemmed the tide.
Well, we've at least throttled back.
Yeah, and I don't want to correct you. You say it as you feel it.
But I do feel that way, and I've been very outspoken on that in my tenure too, in that, we have bylaws and we have rules to follow. And the Guild does a really good job to make sure everybody does that. I mean, for years, I was the guy that had to go around to make sure people weren't drinking behind the table, and I was very unfair.
It's hard work.
Oh man, I had a couple people pushing me and ready to punch me out, and I'm going, look, I'm just doing my job. Do you realize this would go to nothing if an MLCC inspector walked behind your table and saw 5 of your buddies drinking with you?
Yeah.
And better, so why are you doing this? Yeah. But I always called those people up and apologized if I was brusque with them after the fact. But the fact is that people that come from out of state to our festivals go, I have never seen so many brewers get along and have good things to say. Literally at festivals, they're like, oh, we don't have a Bohemian Pilsner, but go see Bert at the Livery, or go see Oliver at Wolverine State. Man, they're making killer lagers. You'll get what you need. With no thought of all like keeping people in my booth because, I'm the best brewer in the state. And I honestly can say from my experience in the Guild, it still continues that everybody's happy and friends and willing to share information with people. And I've not seen that at out-of-state festivals so much.
I also think you bring up your role in terms of, one of your early festival involvements of, or wherever it is on your timeline, your role of self-policing our operation and our compliance with a simple thing like drinking behind the table.
Oh, yeah.
Which is easy to start doing.
Well,
but
I'll forget, but
I feel like it's a metaphor, though, for a bigger thing that we're doing is the Guild has led to a self-policing of our biggest issues, our most wild hornet's nests and thorniest stuff. We kind of work on ourselves prior to bringing in regulators or bringing in our opponents or our other adjacent industries like distributors. We deal with some of these things inwardly, and so that they are more solvable by the time we get the other bodies involved.
Yeah, it gives us a little chance to figure out what we need.
Because that's an example. If you wait for MLCC, this will be worse.
And then, the other thing I started, telling Scott and the board members was like, once, we got through that stuff and it was working to a degree, I said, we really need to tips and TAMs train somebody.
Yeah.
Or serve safe or whatever, which is now done. Now we have a brewery representative that's responsible for their table and all their volunteers. And if somebody is caught drinking behind the table, their brewery's banned. They'll pack up and go home. It's that critical. But now the brewery representative gets, the tips training from Scott, who's now certified for that. And at first we had some representative came out, and it was just easier for us to do it in-house. So now everybody knows the rules, and there's no exceptions, there's no excuses. And this is just making everybody breathe a lot easier because, we've always been scared of the liability of somebody being overserved because a volunteer didn't know, and that person goes out and has an accident and we have a horrible fatality or something, which to our knowledge, we've never had any issues like that. And so by this self-policing, we're keeping our nonprofit license intact and keeping us in the good graces of the city that welcome us to their community for these festivals. And we bring a lot of money to their local communities, Ypsilanti, Marquette, east side of Detroit, downtown Detroit, and Grand Rapids, and Ann Arbor. And, they don't want to lose the tourist dollars. And people then realize, oh, we got a beer city here, we got a beer city here, a beer trail. We're going to come back and vacation this summer with our friends and do this on our own.
Yeah.
So, this is a beneficial thing. The tourism and the beer trail, the distillers trail, and the wine trail have saved our state from extinction almost, because we have no manufacturing. And what's going to save us? Our Great Lakes, our wonderful forests and campgrounds, and our beer, spirits, and wine.
Yeah.
And it's done a remarkable job. And Janet Granholm started the Pure Michigan before she left office, and Rick Snyder extrapolated on it. And it just grows every year with the amount of, billboards that we see, the Great Beer State magazine that we fought for to get done, and they're still doing, thankfully, and the pull-out maps that you can hand people from out of state and go, here, take this with you and put it in your glove box. These are all things that the Guild has brought to the forefront, with this cohesiveness and not having issues with our city, our mayors, our police departments, or anything.
Becoming an asset to our communities versus something to be stomped down.
And instead of going, oh, those damn Brewers are coming back again soon, and then now they're going, oh man, we can't wait.
That extrapolates to what a brewery in planning experiences at their city council.
Yep, exactly.
I think they're welcome now as a fabric of the community, and 20 years ago, that wasn't necessarily the natural instinct. So I think that perspective has changed. And you could use the festival example, but it really models out everywhere.
And, when Rick Snyder got, elected governor the first term, one of the first things he did was fire the existing board of the MLCC and put in Andy Deloney, who was I still believe he's the director of the MLCC, and he was a lawyer for the Restaurant Association, so he knew the industry. And Rick Snyder knew the smartness of putting people that were sympathetic to this industry, yet straight-laced by the rules. But, first thing Andy Deloney did when he spoke at our conference that year, he got up and said, I will make sure that nobody waits over 60 days for a license. Which now, instead of waiting a year or two because they rejected, because you forgot a comma or something, now you got to answer within 60 days. So you got money on the line, stuff waiting to happen, and now you know where you stand. So it's streamlined everything in this industry for all the way through, for everybody. And it's been pretty awesome to see that growth in the time I've been on the board and knowing. And then one other thing I just got to add, one thing that we got going while I was on the board through a lot of hard work from all of us was legislative days. So now we as brewers can go meet these people that make our laws and become friends with them. And they come to our hospitality dinner at the Restaurant Association afterwards. You get to have a beer with them off the clock and talk, frankly, man to man or man to woman about what you need, going over and above your half-hour appointments. So getting brewers in touch with Lansing, the lawmakers, the governor, the head of the MLCC, the lawyers, that work with the distributors and the wholesalers, and everybody can be friends now. This is a huge thing. I encourage everybody to go to these events and support them, because you learn so much in a couple of days spent there that it's just amazing, So
I got one kind of bigger question here, and it's unfair because we have limited time. And so I know this could be a day-long conversation with us, but you've been an active supporter of the agricultural sort of providers to the brewing community for a long time, and now you're engaged in your career as part of a maltster.
One of my many careers.
One of your many careers.
Yeah.
And so I know we can't unpack that whole thing, but I do want to ask, what is having a healthy, cohesive brewing community, what has it done to the adjacent agricultural suppliers? What sort of opportunities or benefits has it provided to those people starting those businesses and trying to figure out how to grow Michigan beer versus just make it?
Oh man, it's been rough. So, I started with Empire Malting in Empire, Michigan as their director of sales in July of a year ago, so 2017. They were barely selling 500 pounds a month. So this July we sold 10 tons, all right? So the game has been stepped up. We've got a lot of young brewers coming up really I guess, listen to me talking on stage at the festivals, because I always spoke about supporting Michigan, and the importance of, buying Michigan products, whether it's the farm market or beer or what. And then later on, when I was using Michigan ingredients, encouraging people to ask their local brewery to have one tap that would be all Michigan ingredients, so you can keep these farmers and their families viable. Instead of paying brokers, bringing stuff that's stale and old from Europe over here, or getting leftovers from Yakima or, Idaho, what Coors didn't want or something, barley-wise. So that led into my involvement with United Hop Brokerage in Greenville. So I, work with Jim Park up there with Michigan hop growers, and trying to really bring the best quality hops of all varieties to the forefront, and trying to educate the growers why we rejected their barley or why we rejected their hops, and what they can do to step up the game to get it right for us, so we will accept those. And then I also work with Craft Culture's yeast propagation up in Houghton, Michigan. And we have 6 varieties of indigenous yeast strains, including lager strains that are wild caught up in the UP. So for brewers that want to take a walk on the wild side, pun fully intended, we offer that too. Not many states can make the claim that we have all the ingredients, including the best water anywhere, to make the best beers possible. So we've got a lot of the new brewers coming up there, like committing already to a ton a month, and some established brewers that get a ton a month or 2 tons a month, like clockwork, and just use it. Either they spread it out in all of their beers, or they have 1 or 2 taps that are strictly Michigan. And it's really been nice to see, but it's been a really tough road to hoe.
Yeah.
But
well, and there have been a lot of moving parts and a lot of people that have individually sacrificed a lot to make things happen. But there's also been MSU in a couple of different facets, both in terms of the hop program and the malt program, and and the guild supporting it.
In the guild, we got grants written for first, Dr. Rob Sarine that runs the hop stuff up at Sutton's Base. We got him a grant that the guild supported 100%, and I was a co-signer on with Scott to get money from MSU for hop development, and that we've got that. And then we did the same thing a while back for Ashley McFarland at the Chatham, barley farms up in the UP, and we got them a lab up there. So now Michigan farmers that want to grow barley can send soil samples up to Chris Capps up there and Brooke Wilk, who's now taken over for Ashley, and get their soil analyzed to figure out what cover crops they need to grow to regenerate the soil to grow barley, because barley is a tough crop to grow in Michigan, and you got to have the right variety in the right circumstances. And then you can send your final product up there for analysis as well. So for us in Empire, we're on sand dunes, and we use a variety called Conlin, which is an English hybrid. It doesn't do well downstate because it doesn't like non-draining soil, which we have a lot of clay over here. But up there on the sand dunes, it's brilliant. And we're getting the best certificate of analysis on this from Hartwick College of any Conlin in North America. So picking the right barley, to grow, and then, having somebody that runs the malt house that knows how to buy barley and how to do their work is, really good, number one. But then explaining that to brewers is tough, because either they just don't know what a COA is for hops or, barley, and how to read it. We make cheat sheets on it. We give you what this means. So we try to educate the brewers. And then we say, I'll tell you what, we'll throw you a couple bags, we'll throw you some hops to try, make a little pilot batch of beer, see what you think. And once they get to taste the freshness and the quality of what we're doing, then they go, well, let's maybe think about ordering, 500 pounds a month. Yeah. And then a lot of new brewers, we've got 4 or 5 small breweries in the state that have come right out of the chute when they first opened. We want to be nothing but Michigan ingredients except for color malts. And that's a pretty easy sell, but still, you got to guide them through things, and you got to tell them how to adjust their mill rollers, because our kernels are different.
And I think, short of taking credit for it, I feel like I'm speaking to it, saying that the benefits of a strong, vibrant community that works together and shares information are not all linear. It's not, you don't always see A to B to C. There are other things that are beyond your imagination that when in 95 and 96, when I, when we met in 95, and then when you started brewing in 96, I couldn't have imagined the amount of Michigan-grown infrastructure that is here now.
Yeah,
And so
it
to me,
is.
it's fascinating, and I see it as a grown in the fertile soil of collaboration that comes out of having a
Absolutely.
group like the Michigan Brewers Guild. So
Yep.
these individuals did their work and earned the credit, but the people that came together made the soil fertile and created an opportunity for us to develop a more resourceful, resilient sense of agriculture that we're now growing our own beer.
Well, it's like it just seems to follow. This is something I've been thinking about in my head for a long time. So I started buying Michigan ingredients back in 2005 at the Livery, although we couldn't get the amount that we have now. So it wasn't an all the time kind of thing. It was like maybe once every 3 or 4 months we get an order in. And it wasn't a lot. And we had Centennial, Chinook, Cascade hops. That was it. We had Pale Malt. That was it. Now we've got all sorts of varieties. Motor City's got a little roaster that they're using over in Detroit. So we've got a lot of things available to people. But, you look at farm markets and the growth of farm markets in the last 20, 25 years. Remember going to my farm market in Kalamazoo back in the old days, if there's 100 people there, that's amazing. Man, this place is packed. And now there's like 4,000 or 5,000 on a Saturday morning, and you got to ride a bike because you can't find a place to park. And people are starting to sit up and take notice about where their food comes from. Well, why not their beer?
Yeah.
And that was always been the mission I had to educate people. You shop at the farm market with your family. Why not shop from some local farmers that grow great ingredients for your beer? And we've got, half dozen malt houses open in the state. Empire's the largest one at this time. We got Independent probably starting up in a couple of years. They're going to be the size of Brees and Rar, but they're still a Michigan company. And they're making a commitment to use some Michigan barley as long as it meets their approval. But we've got a lot of hops. We're selling a lot of hops to the West Coast when they have drought years. We live in a nice fertile part of the country that we don't have a lot of natural disasters that destroy our crops like they do other places, you know. And it's still fickle, with global warming, but we're turning out some really quality hops and some really quality barley in this state from a lot of different suppliers, a lot of dedicated farmers. And I feel as humans in this state, we owe those people some of our hard-earned dollars too. And we should be buying something. And once again, I think every brewery in this state should have one tap that they devote to Michigan ingredients year-round. Because if everybody did that, all of a sudden, all these farmers and all their families and all the producers and the processors, they would be able to keep their bills paid and be in the black and have good turnaround on ingredients and always have fresh stuff to sell. And we would see more farmers growing barley and more growers growing hops because they're not sitting here waiting for a few people to buy them like it is now. It's still a tough road, man, to hold. But I just urge anybody that, reads this book or sees these trailers or anything, that this is important, that you got to support your local agriculture, whether it's your food or what. I mean, don't you want to know what goes into your mouth, in your family's mouths, in your friends' mouths? And, that should go all the way from the food chain to what we imbibe. And I think we're at a perfect time to be able to do that. And it's not as hard as it was back in 2005 to do. So, it's really exciting for me. I've been a brewer since '96. And still brew every Sunday on a 1-barrel system with all Michigan ingredients. And it's still never a dull moment making great beer with Michigan ingredients and seeing new stuff coming down the pike and the flavors we're getting and tweaking the recipes year to year. And, knowing I go home and the food I'm eating for dinner after brew day came from the farm market yesterday. And, it's a good thing. And, I really urge people to be part of that. So.
Yeah, man. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you for all your commitment to this industry, too. It would not be the same if you weren't involved,
Oh, thanks, man.
And that's the truth right here.
Oh, thanks. It's an honor. And likewise, it reflects all of us.
It's like the Grateful Dead song. What a long, strange trip it's been.
That's right, man.
All right.
Bring
Thanks,
it in.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening and sharing while supporting Michigan breweries and craft beer everywhere. The Michigan Brewers Guild was formed in 1997 with its first summer beer festival taking place in July of 1998. Its now 5 annual festivals are dedicated exclusively to Michigan beer brewed by more than 270 member breweries. The Michigan Brewers Guild exists to promote and protect the passionate Michigan beer industry in every way possible. To learn more, visit us at mibeer.com or say hello on one of our social media pages, as we love hearing from you. From coast to coast, from far and near, let's drink Michigan beer.
Let's drink